ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the workshop 254. It is the 8th day of January, the year being 2022, and the time is 8 or 9 a.m. East African time. So our topic for conversation today revolves around the buildings we see collapsing. So what in technical terms engineers and the like refer to as structural soundness. So we've had multiple incidences on the issue, and today we have two guests. We have Dr. Njagi Charagu, the Director, National Building Inspectorate, and we also have Engineer Shammah Kiteme, a consulting engineer in the civil discipline, who also has a vast experience in the subject. So the objective of today's discussion will be to arrive at answers to four main questions. Number one, why do we have our buildings collapsing? And the second is, who are the culprits, or who do we blame for the buildings collapsing? The third objective is to ascertain what our institutions are doing to address the issue. That we have the government institutions, and we also have our society, that is the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And the last objective is to ascertain who is responsible for building. When you're putting up a building, do we say it's the structural engineer, or do we peg the responsibility of the entire structure, its integrity, to the QSs, to the architects, or who exactly do we pin down when, say, an issue crops up or a building collapses? Do we say it's the contractor or the owner? So those are the four objectives of today's discussion.
Everyone listening, and thank you, Namano, for this opportunity. Kindly confirm you can hear me speak.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So it's a privilege for me to be here and have a conversation on this important topic, because really the subject that many of us as civil engineers particularly should be interested in. And we may not really, especially structural engineers, we may not even have an option. We really have to get involved one way or the other. So I'll just begin by saying my name is Engineer Shammah Kiteme. I'm a civil engineer, and I've practiced in the area of structural design, largely in building sector. I've also practiced in the area of wastewater engineering and stormwater containment systems. And I've practiced for a couple of years now, registered as a professional engineer, and also I've been registered by EBK as a consulting engineer. So I've practiced a lot in the area of buildings, and I've also written a couple of unpublished papers, and also published articles by newspapers on the area. So it's an area I've focused on for quite some time now. Now, I have also been involved in a couple of regulations or standards, and at policy level, been involved in the building code since 2019. And the process is ongoing, almost at the tail end of integrating the hazard maps in the building code 2020. And I've been involved. I've also been involved in domestications of Eurocode structural design standards in the country, and the process is ongoing. So I've also been involved in the JBCC standard contract document, which basically touches on buildings And so I wanted to mention all those just to expound the fact that I've been involved in the area of buildings, both at design and also at regulations and policy for formulation. Thanks, engineer. Thank you.
Namano for hosting us and the people who are listening to us. Yeah, my name is Engineer Shammah Njagi Charagu, a consulting engineer with the Engineers Board of Kenya, and the acting secretary of National Building Inspectorate, State Department for Public Works, and a fellow for the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. I've been involved in the structural designs and supervision for the last 1 year, working on the public works. From the moment I joined it back in 1991 as an assistant engineer to acting chief engineer structure, and now the acting secretary, National Building Inspectorate. When buildings collapse, I've been involved in all the investigations and the research. And as we shall see later on, when I answer the questions about how many have collapsed, I have all those reports and details. Even when I did my master's course, my thesis was on collapsing structures in Kenya. And I was able to go through and see what has been happening in the country. And therefore, as we discuss on the collapsing buildings in Kenya, that's my area of jurisdiction, the area of investigation. And of late, I've several investigating, and we have the results, and we'll be able to share together. So thank you, engineer. That's enough for the time being. Currently, we have about 59 reports of the buildings that have collapsed in the country. And of recent, especially if you talk of 2021, we have about 10 of them in 2021. Remember, we began 2021 by a collapse in March 2021 that was Kisumu, Jaramogi Oginga Referral Hospital, and then Capsavet in Nandi in April. And then we had in Vihiga, we had at the Bare, we also had a collapse of the building. And then in Nyamira in May 2021, we had another collapse. And then in Kamukunji in June 2021. Then we had Gashie, the one that killed about 3 people in Kiambu in September 2021. And then we had Kinong, Kiambu 2021, and then Mamboleo, Kisumu in 2021, and then Uiro 2021 October, and Kirinyaga in November 2021, and then finally the one we have Kandara, that the Deacon Greens in December 2021. So this year alone, we have over 10 that have collapsed, but generally there are about 59 structures that have collapsed in the last decade. Nairobi is the greatest culprit with 22 of them, and then we have Kiambu, followed by Kiambu with 11, and then Kisumu 5, then we have Kisii, we have 3, Mombasa we have 3, Kirinyaga we have 2, Kakamega, Vihiga we have 3, and Nandi we have 2. Then Kajiado, Kilifi, Muranga, Nyamira, Kericho, Mumabe, we have 1 of those structures that have collapsed. So that's the data which I have currently. And we've been carrying out inspection audit in various counties. Currently, I've visited over 22 counties and inspected over 17,000 buildings. And out of those, we have about 840 that are unsafe structures. And out of those ones, at least the owners have been able to remove over 100. And ourselves, we were also able to remove about 150. So we are remaining about 500 that are unsafe. And out of those 500, we've been able to test about 200 and communicate with the owners. And some of them have been able to remove. I'm able to report we have people from Maridi who have removed about 3 of them. We have 3 that were removed from Mombasa by the owners. And we have about 10 that were removed at Huruma by the owners after giving the report after the test and finding these buildings unsafe. So that's the quick on the data that we have on the structures that are safe and the ones that are unsafe.
Most of the buildings that we have are not fit for occupation. Is that true?
No, you see, it's about 800 out of 17,000. It's a percentage, which are not safe. We have several, almost about 60% are safe for occupation, but the others need to be checked even before we have the calamities coming. But for my data, it's true. Some of the constructions going on, especially where the engineers are not involved, professionals are not there. Most of them are unsafe. So I've visited several over about 22 counties, and this is something which is happening all over, which we need to look at and think about. Is this true? We have unsafe structures in the land.
It's good to know, but it's also frightening to know at the same time.
Okay, but the people are acting with them. That's the good news. The owners are on top of it when we advise them, and when the community talk to us and tell us it's an unsafe structure. Like yesterday, I was in Baburi, Mombasa. Somebody raised an alarm of a building which is under construction. It's about 8 floors, and to decide for 3 floors, and actually it's unsafe. And to report to the county government of Mombasa that they need to take care of that building, which is in Baburi.
Engineer, for that question. Of course, you have pointed out that I'm a practitioner and part of the one who has brought up these buildings that are safe. That may not be precise because none of my buildings I've designed has been condemned, yes, but has come down. Nonetheless, you have asked a very important question on some of the causes for the building collapsing. Now, I need to point out to the listeners that studies have been done by NCA, and of course, Dr. Engineer Charagu has already indicated that he has been involved in any building that has collapsed in this country, and the NBI has also documented those many causes. But you would find out that a number of buildings that have collapsed, poor workmanship contributes, so that you find concrete that is honeycombing, and generally quality control and quality assurance lacking. You also have sometimes substandard material. Construction involves materials a lot, whether it is roads, whether it is in water, whether it is in buildings. And materials are everything in terms of constructing the structure. Now, if you have substandard materials, and this can be sand, it can be every kind of material you're using in construction, then you are really exposed. Of course, we have recently seen unqualified people taking responsibility for structural design. And so basically, poor structural design is also a contributor. We also have people who completely do not comply with statutory and safety requirements. And this also contributes to collapse of buildings. Because we have the building code, we have the building regulations. And they are there to guide the processes so that if we follow well, we're able to get safe structures. So there we have situations whereby people really do not comply with that. Now, we also have situations where buildings collapse because of inadequate maintenance. And we have situations of poor construction methods where you do not follow the sequence correctly. You may, for example, remove shuttering before curing has happened, and then you are loading the structure before it is supposed to be loaded, or before it is set properly. And so you can really summarize all these things and say that largely they are really human factors of omission and commission. Because whether you talk of professional design, it's a human factor. because you are going to have inadequate design. When you carry out poor construction processes, do construction methods, it's a human factor. Sometimes, of course, and this has been documented, we also don't deal with the drainage properly, and so it jeopardizes our foundations. Other issues like poor mixed design of concrete and like I've alluded, curing of concrete. All these basically they are really human factors of omission and commission. And we cannot rule out, because we have seen a bomb blast bringing buildings down. We saw that in New York, 2001, and others. Sometimes also earthquakes can cause buildings collapsing. Sometimes we have seen areas like Muranga, landslides, soil slips, and all that. So, but suffice it to say, significantly buildings collapse because of human factors. And that will be interesting subject as we continue with this conversation, Engineer. Back to you, thanks.
Following what Njagi Charagu said, in my research and in the records I have, there are actually 7 major causes. The first one and the greatest culprit is concrete, especially what we are calling the poor concrete mix. In all the 10 that have collapsed this year, the culprit is concrete mix, and except for one, where 2 of them, where we have foundation failure because of design issues, but poor concrete mix is a culprit, including the Muranga one. Those have done the test now, and I'll be able to give out the report. But for the time being, because under investigation, I may not explain that. But you are sure the one we get the highest concrete class is around class 15. The ones out of collapse. And of late, the Kiambu ones, there is one which has gone to as low as 6 newtons per meter square. Very low concrete mix. So that is the greatest culprit in all this, and that's why we are asking the owners and the builders to make sure they use professional, use contractors who are able to understand what is a concrete mix before they do the construction. When they are told, when the engineer specifies class 20 or class 25 or class 30, they are able to understand what does the engineer mean in this one. That's what I've noted is the greatest problem. Most of the foodies do not understand when we talk about the concrete mix. And they are there concreting, but they don't achieve the grade. Yes, that's the greatest culprit. The second one is workmanship, as my brother said, engineer and construction methodology, where the human error is there, depending on how people are doing it. For example, the Nyamira collapse, it was a kind of the format which was there, and the way the methodology of construction was going on, and many others. We have poor construction materials that people are using. I've noted even most of our engineers do not carry out material tests to counter check whether the sand you are using from Mahio, the sand you are using from other places, whether it has chemical compositions or is it the right material, or what kind of mix are you supposed to do using that kind of sand which you are doing. And even when you get the cement from the manufacturer, do you check the kind of specifications I've given, and do you randomly test to be able to see that even as you specify and look at your mix, that these materials are the right one to use. The fourth one is what we are calling inadequate designs. And this is now where the engineers have an issue. And when I'm going training, I'm telling the engineers, there is no harm of getting another person to counter check your work. Because yes, we are using the computer technology, which is quite good. We are using the software that we have. But if you make an error in terms of loading, and then subject it just to the software, it will give you results, but the results may not work for you. And I've seen some of the buildings coming down because of the span in the design that have been done. Looking at the beam spans and the columns, look at the one in Kino, look at the one in Dika Green, look at the one in Ruiro. Look at the spans that are there. The engineer are not able to counter check. And if you miss one loading, you have what you call inadequate designs, and the columns are the culprits that fail in all that. And the other one was about the owners also changing the use of the building. You ask the engineer to design a mansionette, and in the process of designing the mansionette, then all of a sudden you change and decide I'm going to do it as a store, and that becomes a big problem when you're doing it as a store. And that can be a big issue that we need to be checked, because it is affecting some of the buildings. And we have about 5 that are collapsed because of change of structure. Kamukonji is one. We have another one in Nakuru, another place that have just come down because of that kind of an issue. So we need to check all that and see what we can do. Also, our engineers, they are looking supervision. They are unable to supervise their works, and so it becomes a big problem. Also, you find you have so many projects with yourself, you have no time to go and guide, and that's one of the causes we have noted. Lack of supervision, lack of direction, or the foodies who are doing there. So they do it their own way, which is not right. So we need to look at all that, even as we had the other, what my brother was saying, the other natural causes that come about. But those are few. What is critical is a human error when you don't follow the procedures or the specifications as they have been given. Thank you, W Namano. Concrete mix, poor construction materials, poor workmanship and construction methodology, inadequate design, change of intended use of the structure, lack of supervision by professionals, and lack of adherence to specifications. Those are the 7. I'm talking about the ones that have come out in our research, in our investigations as we do that.
Engineer, and that's a tricky question, but I recognize Engineer Charagu, my senior, is here, so it can be an open question for debate. But I think for me, every day I get convinced and move towards giving a big responsibility to the developer, then the contractor. Now, we know when the building collapses, we go for the engineer and we take him. We always I mean, assume it's a structural issue, and that's justifiable. But look at this way: the developer, the contractor. The developer has interests, pecuniary interests, because it's an investment. The contractor is the one implementing it. So the engineer is invited by the developer. He's supposed to supervise the contractor. The engineer is supposed to do a contract with the developer. And at times, of course, I'm actually talking about all the building professionals, the architect, the QS, the engineer. And generally, I want to put them low in the pecking order, because basically, you pay the piper calls the tune. And again, we have free market economy. Now, if we have free market economy, we look for clients, the developer will engage us. And if the developer insists that you cannot cut corners in his project, and if he is willing to pay for quality and facilitate that, and if he will demand it, and then he will retain and respect the opinion of the structural engineer, for instance, and other professionals, you can be sure he will have set the tone. And the environment for doing shoddy work will not be there. Because really, he is the one who employs everyone in that project. Now, I'm not saying the professionals should not take professional responsibility. They should. All right? Now, if you do not qualify to do a certain work, for example, an architect taking the work of the structural engineer, that should not be acceptable. And no professional should do that. And then, but you also know that more often than not, professional will understand and point out where the services can reach, and then encourage or actually invite another professional to do what is not within their scope. And we know that happens. But the more reason I think contractors carry a huge responsibility is because quality of construction and materials is largely on their side. And I've advocated that contractors must also retain services of engineers so that they can have internal quality assurance and quality control, even without the supervision of the consultants. Because really, they are the one there daily, and if they cut corners, it is punishing. We often say that lawyers can explain their mistakes into thin air, and doctors can bury their mistakes into the grave. But as in the construction sector, the evidence of shoddy work will be seen by everyone and probably for years. And so they carry a big responsibility, contractors, to ensure that they do not do substandard work. All right? Now, us as professionals, our responsibility comes into the contractual framework that we are involved in these projects. Do we allow ourselves to be overruled? And I have been dismissed by a client because a fundi came and he tried to say him, this design is very expensive. This is what we have been doing for very many years. We can offer this solution at this cost. Why is he recommending H16? We can do this with H10 or H12. And I was not there. But what I do is that I give notification that I'm no longer responsible for these works. And I withdraw formally, in fact, even writing to NCA. So we have a responsibility to point out to the contractors, to the developers, and to the society at large of the dangers inherent in doing some substandard work. So if you ask me, I've ranked, and I know this is an open for debate, I've ranked number one, developers, I've ranked contractors, and I've ranked the professional, the third, because really, and I know this will be open for debate, but I've really explained my reasoning. And I think if then we have to close this situation and stop it all together, we now must go for the developer and let them carry the hugest responsibility, so that then they will delegate this responsibility to whoever responsible, because contracts basically they're about managing risks, and the person who can best handle a risk, they take it. So if we give the responsibility to the developer, then he will distribute the responsibility probably to the contractor, tell him my works, if they fail, you carry the biggest blame, or the structural engineers and the other professionals, who then he will charge them with the right responsibility. And his involvement will be to demand the best from everyone that he has engaged in the project. Thanks, engineer.
I agree with Njagi Charagu about the way he's ranking it, but we also need to think about the developers who are remain, the developers who are not able to do things, and they are actually convinced by the contractors. I said, Njagi Charagu was saying, sometimes I told you are using a very high reinforcement. We have been using a Y12. Somebody is using this engineer is giving Y20. But what I would request the contractors also is that they have to insist that the professionals are important in this project, and the reason why the approvals will not go through without an architect, without an engineer, without the professionals who are there is because they take responsibility on that. And when you put them aside, I would urge the contractor to refuse the work and put it aside. I know the developer wants to save money, and that's why my brother Kiteme was saying they need to be asked more. But some of them, when they go to court, I've gone to court severally, and they claim the arraignment. They claim me. I gave professionals to do I gave an architect, I gave an engineer, I gave a contractor to construct for me a building. I'm a arraignment. So where do I come in? These professionals misled me, and maybe sometimes he's the one who pushed them to reduce the enforcement. So I would the first person because he's the one on the daily basis on the ground. That's the contractor. He needs to take a stand, his professional stand, and agree that he will not go to change any specification given by the engineer. And I have some contractors who come and tell you, even when I look at you are doing your engineer, there are some things I'm not sure about. Can you explain? So the engineer can also counter check. In the case he finds there was an omission in his design, he can change on the ground, because it's better to be blamed for changing the design rather than the building coming down, to show you that you are doing the cost and then the building come down. So to me, the contractor takes a responsibility in all this, because is the person who can say, no, I'm not going to ruin what the professionals have done. If there is teamwork between the professionals, the contractor, and even the developer who comes in, who wants to save money, then it becomes a bit easier. But if someone has been investing in a court like me, you'll be able to see that the developers are able to escape. They are able to run away, because you are asked, why did he engage you? It's because he wanted you, the contractor, you, the professional, to give him a quality work. And that's why, as Njagi Charagu was saying, if you find he is not engaging you, resign for that project and write official to Engineers Board of Kenya and write to NCA, so that and the county government, so that they are able to stop the works that are going on. And if we are able to be active in that, we'll be able to stop these collapse of structures in the country. But to me, the contractor needs to up their game and even stop doing the work if the owner is trying to push them to do just on the things. And National Building Inspectorate was formed back in 2015. It was under the executive order of the president. There was a specific role that time because of what had happened. There was a task for 3 months to inspect buildings in Nairobi and demolish those ones that are found unsafe, and then also profile the ones that can be rectified, the ones that can be approved, and then they are able to be rectified by the owner. So our major duty now, or our function, is carrying out what we call National Building Inspection Services, where we audit both existing and under construction building. But here I think the ones under construction, they are wholly under NCA. We are supposed to be protecting that one. So mostly the ones that are existing, we do what we are calling National Building Inspection Service, carrying out inspection and audit for those buildings. And the reason is to identify, are there any signs that this building is not safe, or this building has some issues in terms of structural, in terms of architectural, in terms of the services, because even some of the buildings are having a problem because of electrical functions, electrical services, and sometimes it's also because of the mechanical works, the piping works. You find the cracks are happening because the pipes were not tested in terms of pressure testing. So we carry out audit and inspection services, and after we find a building has some issues, there are some cracks, there are some kind of defects that you are seeing, we go to a second step of testing those buildings, doing non-destructive tests, so that we are able to see what kind of workmanship was put in that building, what kind of reinforcement was that building. We use the ferroscan, we use the ultrasonic testing methods, and we are able to identify the issues. And then from there is when we communicate with the owner and tell the owner, this is what we have found out. Together with the county government, we are able to advise the owner, please rectify your building. We only come in case it doesn't. That's when we go in and act as a government through the county government and through the NCA. We are able to go through and act on that, so that things can be done in that way. So that's some of the things that we do, so that we are able at least to make sure our environment is safe. But our key thing is to advise the owners on what they can do. But if they refuse to do that, because some of them are I don't know what happened, they just refuse, then we come in through the Physical and Planning Act. We are able to go in and we are able now to act together with the county government to remove the structures. And actually, we've been able to, together with the county government, to remove several structures in the country, so that we are able to save life in the nation. So that's actually what we do, and we are able now to save the nation. We also have given the citizens our hotline number, so that they are able now to call on us at the time. That's why I was saying here, like yesterday I was called to somewhere in Baburi because the citizens were scared of a building. So we have been getting so many calls like those, and we are able to send our staff using the NCA, collaborate with the BK. We are able now to go there and check and advise the owner. If the owner doesn't take responsibility, then we take that next step of stopping those works and using the provincial administration, the national government administration services, and they are able now to evacuate and remove the person from that. And we have success stories of where we have evacuated and saved life in this nation.
From what you just explained, NBI's National Building Inspectorate's main objective or function is to audit buildings.
Yes.
Is that correct, engineer?
It is true, to carry out inspection audit of buildings. Actually, in the executive order of the president, it is carrying out national building inspection services all over the country. That's what we do.
So auditing. And then
Yes.
from these audits, you advise the developer.
Yes.
And then the developer is given the option of taking certain action, whether to demolish the building, rehabilitate the building, or
Yes.
just to certify the building as being sound for occupation. Is that correct, Engineer Charagu?
Yeah, that's true. We advise them on what they can be able to do so that they are able to correct their situation and things follow in the right way.
Developer says fails to act on those recommendations, you move in to take action in order to protect the public from unsound structures, if I'm getting that correctly.
Yes, you see when you look at our developers, they are very litigious. Let me use that term. There's something in our constitution which we call about fair and administrative action, where you must inform the owner, so that before even you demolish a building, you must take all the processes, give him all the steps, so that by the time you go in there, it is him who has failed totally. But for the ones that are unsafe, that one we always talk with, we always let the county government and join hands together as multi-sectoral kind of agency, and we are able now to to evacuate at the same time with the National Disaster Management Unit. We are able to remove everyone from that building, pending the owner to do his work of demolition. If he doesn't, then we are able to test it, and when we find there are failures, then from there, for the sake of saving life in the country, we come in as multi-sectoral. Together with the county, we remove the structure. Is that before you put up the structure, it cannot be approved by the county government without the professionals in place. You know, there's a procedure. And one of the issues is that you must engage an architect to interpret your mind and come up with the structure. Then the engineer comes in to do the structural designs, how the structural elements will carry that building. And that's what the county government checks. They are the first people who check on the structure you are coming with, and they have that mandate which they are given by the Physical and Land Use Planning Act of 2019, which anybody all over the country should not put up any structure without the approval of the county government, either being allowed by the actually by the county government to use the land that the person is occupying. And that's very critical. And for that to happen, you must have the professionals. So if the Kenyans who don't know that and begin with that, then you are able now to follow. Because after that, after the approvals are done by the county, is when NEMA and the NCA comes in. They don't come in before the county government has done their work. So that's very critical. The county government is the first off after you get the professionals. So they cannot do anything without the professionals doing their input in that.
For that question, you know, because there are elections that are coming in IEK, I've seen people start saying that they are deep state in IEK. So I was elected in 2018 as a council member, and I was elected again in 2020 as a council member. So not 3 terms. I'm completing my 2nd term in the IEK council. I'm also a member of Architectural Association of Kenya Engineers Chapter, currently serving as the vice chair. So what I know we have done, and before there, I'm forgetting a very important point that Engineer Charagu raised about the contractors being central to the collapse of the building. And I think that's important point to point out, of course, from his experience, and then indicate that if then we want to fix this mess, then where the contractor is an important way, and we can consider whether we need to ensure that every contractor is not allowed to go on site without an engineer or something like that. So I thought that was an important point that Engineer Charagu mentioned. But coming to your question, Engineer Namano, every time there is a collapse of buildings. Of late, you have seen engineers taking position and going to the site, doing the preliminary assessment, and sometimes even issuing press statements. In the council and through the structures that we have engaged EBK, we have engaged NCA, partly through the people we nominate to those boards, the boards of those organizations. But I also know we have engaged relevant state departments, and I've been involved with the State Department of Housing and Transport. Personally, I've been involved at the level of being a council member in engaging on these issues. You know that we are also represented in the drafting of the building code as IEK. We're also represented in the National Implementation Committee on Eurocodes. So we have been involved in giving our best professional input in this problem, and lobbying to see how it can be stopped. Now, you'll also remember that IEK has also held webinars and other meetings to sensitize members on the ways to look at the quality of our design and supervision to ensure that projects do not lead to building collapsing. And Njagi Charagu is a panelist in IEK. We have engaged him also in a webinar on collapse of buildings, just to make sure members are aware on the issues that are emerging every time there's a research. And NCA, after their research, they have disseminated it to us, which means IEK has remained a central player in terms of leading this conversation. And you'll not be surprised that our members are also involved, and Njagi Charagu is one of them. And I've already indicated a number of platforms have been involved in. So yeah, what I'm saying is we have taken a leading role. And I have certain platforms with counties, CECs for infrastructure or departments responsible for buildings, and chief officers. I also know that there are counties where basically there is no registered professional engineer, and I don't want to quote some of them, but I have them, and I've had CECs and chief officers confess as much in a forum, and even go to the extent of saying, look, we have tried to do interviews and we could not get these professionals. If you ask them, they will tell you the professionals refuse the pay. Now, you cannot have a hospital running without a doctor. Why do we want to run departments that are approving buildings in counties without a registered professional engineer or a department that is well staffed? That really is an administrative decision for counties to make. What to pay professionals so that they can retain them because they see the worth of the professionals. So we have been involved in lobbying, Council of Governors, and the relevant committee of structure in the Council of Governors, so that then they come to appreciate the need for having the right professionals doing the job. Of course, I won't say that personally I've also published on this area and engaged intensely on the need for counties to take leading a role. In fact, I got myself in trouble at some point because I was accused of creating a friction between NCA and counties, which was not the case. So basically what we're saying is that we have been at the forefront as an institution, and we will continue doing this. And I'll surprise you, I had one minister, I think CEC in, I don't know whether it's Bomet, in one of the forums that I was in, that realizing how close he is to the jail in case a building collapses in his county. And that for me was a very good signal that probably they have started appreciating on the need to make sure that proper inspection and regulation is put in place at the county level to ensure that buildings don't collapse. And so I think that for me was a good indicator that yes, they start appreciating, yes, if a building collapses in your jurisdiction, you really can find yourself in jail pretty fast, because the arc of history bends towards towards justice. And what is happening is that the society is more and more knowledgeable and educated. So there's no way you can bamboozle our society by just explaining yourself into thin air of issues that are basically administrative and should have taken a decision and you have not taken. So increasingly, when we put that pressure to counties, the departments responsible appreciate that. Then they should even create packages that professionals are willing to come and take to be employed there and do their professional job. So basically, keeping this conversation alive also helps generally because people are more aware. People don't want to be involved in buildings that are going to collapse because of the mess that they are going in, besides just losing life. But your license is going to be attached and all that. So basically, engineer, I would tell you from where I sit, and probably a failure that we have not communicated as much, but we have played a critical and leading role in terms of making sure that our society takes a different course. We stop this and extend this collapse of buildings. Thanks, engineer. I've taken a leading role at the council, of course, from the main council. But you have also seen us, every time there's a collapse of buildings, you've seen us involve our branches. So that the first point of information, if a building has collapsed in Kisumu, we get from the Western branch. And our engagement with the people on the ground also, because most likely the NCA team will rush in there. The NCA is also involved there. And don't be surprised, some of the members who are employed by NCA and NBI are own members. So we are, yes, engaged through the branches and also at the main office, so that even the statements we will issue at the main office, actually, we have involved the people on the ground. Because really, we should not just fly an engineer from here to Kisumu, basically because a building has collapsed, while we have competent engineers there. And so, yeah, but you'll also appreciate the governance through branches is taking shape. And we are just launching more and more branches so that we're going to be stronger and stronger through the counties, because devolution is the way to go constitutionally and otherwise. Thanks, engineer. For that good question. Now, the structural engineer is supposed to conceive structural frames and determine what is the safest, frame, or design structurally. He's supposed to produce structural designs and details, and focus really on safety, making sure that the designs are safe. Of course, they must be functional. We're also looking at reliability. We also want to have designs that are economical. And because sustainability is a very important aspect now, we also want to look at designs that are sustainable. And so the structural design engineer conceives the structural design within those, that kind of framework. But it is also his responsibility to ensure that his designs are implemented to the letter, and that there is consistency in his conception, that what he designs and what has been constructed on site. So it's very important, because you can conceive a design and what is constructed on design is completely different. And that's why Engineer Charagu pointed out the whole issue of workmanship and supervision, so that when you design, the construction follows the design. Now, I earlier pointed out that really materials are very important, because really construction is largely materials. So materials must also meet specifications. And how do you ascertain that the materials meet specification? You must have a inspection and testing plan to ensure that there's quality assurance and quality control that is observed all through. Because look, if you designed your steel to be grade 500, and then what you have on site is 425, that is a stress. You need a very high factor of safety to get it right. And unless you test your materials, then you are really doing guesswork. Unless you do a cube test, for example, on the concrete design, unless you do try or mix design, and we had a debate yesterday in in Telegram, Transform IEK, about concrete classes and all that. Unless you do the tests, then you don't know the quality of the concrete you're using. And it is the only engineer who can ask for that. Now, I've been involved in structural audits of several buildings. And so a client wants me to give an opinion of the structure. Then I do non-destructive tests, Schmidt-Hammer, and other tests. Then I ascertain the quality of the concrete used. Some of the standing buildings, the quality is so bad that I keep on advising that though the design is normally a 50-year design period, this building needs an extensive review, probably when it is at age 40, because the quality of concrete here is so bad. It is so low that I actually, when I get the quality is that low, I redesign the building. I apply the loads. I redesign the building with now this poor quality of concrete to see whether it stands, because I give my own opinion as a professional engineer. So yes, so the engineer must ensure that the design he designed has been implemented the way he designed. And quality control and quality assurance then becomes an important aspect. But I need to point out that we have situations where the society wants the engineer up to and including the point that you submit the license and the drawing is approved, the drawings are approved. From there, the engineer is not engaged. And that is happening a lot. And so sometimes the engineer is not to blame in such circumstances. At other times, the contractor does not disclose issues on site. So he goes on, he does mess, and he does not consult the engineer. And so the engineer is not even aware. We will do our best to keep a clerk of works on site, but really the contractor also takes responsibility, and this has been emphasized in the previous conversation. So yeah, that's the role of the structural engineer in a nutshell, but we must point out that if the architect does not involve the structural engineer, if the contractor does not involve the structural engineer, then his role becomes moot. And what he is supposed, the value he is supposed to add in the built environment, then it is not there. You know, suffice it to say, some professionals take role that is not there. So you have an architect taking the structural decisions that is not competent to handle. But those, they may not be majority, but they are there here and there. So, but that is the environment that we are in. But in a nutshell, that yes captures the role of the structural engineer. Thank you, Engineer.
Yeah, I think Engineer Kiteme has answered very well. But one thing I want to add, and I want to speak with the structural engineers, is that the major responsibility is to make sure the sizing of all the structural elements are done properly. I know there have been issues with the architect, because the architect wants some spaces and wants to reduce the column size, at the same time wants to reduce the beam size. And it's the responsibility of the engineer to make sure that what you got from the design, the sizing that you did, speak it out with the owner and the architect. Let them understand. There are some areas you may not go. It's even better to change to other systems. But if they don't want concrete columns, they don't want to go to steel columns, and you give a size of 300 by 400, and then they are telling you to change to 300 by 200, because that's what has been happening in the market. It's the responsibility of the engineer to say no as a structural engineer, because the sizing of the structural members is the responsibility of the engineer. And from the onset, when you engage by the owner and the architect gives the drawings, engage with the architect, tell him you have to change this to this kind of a scenario, because these members cannot work. Let them know from the onset that the beam size is this size, the trusses are this size, the columns are this size, the slabs are this size. So they are able now to at least also change their heights in terms of the accessibility, in terms of the spacing of their rooms from the onset. But the engineer is critical in sizing the structural elements, the columns, the beams, the slabs, and the trusses, and all those elements. Even the foundation is very key. Then the other process that my colleague, Engineer Kiteme, talked about need to be followed in terms of supervision, because sometimes if you don't go to the site, they even change your sizes of the columns. And by the time you're going there, you realize that the column which you decide as a short column has become a slender column because the size now have been changed. And let me share here that most of the buildings have collapsed. Another culprit in some structural elements is the columns. The columns have been failing in most of the structures, and the way people have been sizing those columns becomes an issue, because when the fundi, when you're doing an underground parking, this is a residential area, you're doing an underground parking, it means the columns and or the ground to fast floor, all those columns are structural columns, and the roading, the masonry does not carry any road in all those. But when somebody has sized the columns in a way as if the masonry is also being used in the same, you find failures coming. And we have those builders have collapsed, are packed on one another, and the culprit is columns. So engineers, let structural engineers take your position in terms of sizing the columns and stand with your design and explain to the owner, explain to the architect, that's the reason why you have done 1, 2, 3. But don't start bowing. To an extent, you give some standard things and then it fails on you. And that's what I need to add from what Engineer Kiteme has said. Another area which is of great concern, and the counties we have now engaged, we have agreed, like the Kiambu County, you go to Nairobi County, they will not approve any structure beyond 2 floors without a geotechnical investigation, because the geotechnical engineers are very critical. Let me give an example, because it's understood. The one for Ruiru. You see, if you go, if you look at that building, the one which is existing next to the one that's collapsed, on the upper side, when you look at the bearing capacity, you realize due to the geotechnical investigations, the soils on the upper side came to around 250. But when you go to the lower side, which caused the failure, because of foundation failure, somebody did not understand there was a fear of the material. And if there was a geotechnical engineer, someone would have been able to know that the bearing capacity which was below was lower. It was almost rather than 100. And therefore, that building collapsed because of the punching, that the columns could not, the base of the lower side could not carry the building. And so it came down. So geotechnical investigations are critical, and we advise the structural engineers, don't complete your final designs without having a geotechnical report of the area. And don't just carry one point. After you get the architectural layout, go to different corners and actually be able to know what is the actual bearing capacity of the area, so that you can size your foundations well. For we have about 10 buildings that are failed because of foundations, and that way we'll be able now to go forward. Let's use our geotechnical engineers in the same. Thank you. When the engineers are being trained, they are trained in 3 areas. They are trained in structure, in water, in highways. Any civil engineer is trained in those areas. But when they come out, they specialize. And that's why we have, like in the government, we have the materials department. The people who go to materials department now wholly deal with geotechnical. There are people who come out and specialize on geotechnical engineering. It's a unit. Some units are trained on that one. But it's for you now to be able to follow your line. I think that around when you talk about integrity, I think there's the next one which is coming. The next question, people need to know which is your area of specialization. Is it structural in terms of buildings, or are you dealing with water? Are you dealing with highways? Are you dealing with geotechnical? Because people are doing structures and they have no experience of a building which is built 3 floors, because they went to highways, they went to water. And that's why we are talking about integrity, the code of ethics. Someone needs to reach a level and realize this is where I'm trained at, and therefore I'll be able to do 1, 2, 3 in terms of that. We have also to be disciplined as engineers and realize my area of competence is either in materials, is either in structures, or is either in water. We must also think in that light.
I think the other important, and I know you have been very keen on this because I've listened to you extensively, is the whole issue of foundations. So that really the structural design, everything we do, really we transfer to the ground. And we must also get it right, so that then we have the soil bearing pressure correctly. And we size our foundation correctly. We think about that, because then the way Eurocodes has framed it is that there are decisions on foundation that the structural engineer can make, but there are decisions on foundations beyond which a geotechnical engineer must be involved. So that's another area, and it would be interesting to hear from you, Senior, to what extent that contributes in the many collapses that you have investigated.
In different universities and they come out. They are engaged in different fields. Some go to highways, that is the roads engineering. Others go to water, which is water engineering. Others go to structures, and others go even to marine engineering. And these are different disciplines that are there. But when they come for the interviews, I'm in the panel of IEK, and I'm also in the panel of EPK. When they come and we register them as civil engineers. So this is what now we want to put to our engineers in terms of the engineering code of ethics, is that know your area of specification or area of competence. For example, if you are an engineer, the highest building you have designed is about 1 floor. And then a client gives you, even if you're a structural engineer, gives you a building of 40 or 50 stories. Just it's ethics, it's integrity. Just look for somebody who has been able to be trained on that line to help you to be able to achieve your design. Otherwise, you may not get some of the factors that are required. I also talk about the highway engineers. Yes, you have been trained to design highways or roads in that line. And then somebody, because you are the HSC engineer and you can be able to use your practice certificate and go to the county and it's approved, you take over that responsibility. It is ethical for you to know, if I am a roads engineer and I'm not competent in the structural element, in the design of the building, then I need to get somebody, my colleague, who is more qualified in structural issues, and share together so you are able now to achieve the standards that are required. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that in the engineering ethics, it's good for you to stick to the area of jurisdiction. Be yourself and agree that in this area I'm not competent enough. Let me use another engineer. We can work together. After all, we are a team. We can help one another to check one another, and that will help in terms of maintaining our code of ethics. The other thing in terms of engineering code of ethics is that when you go to a site and you realize that there was an engineer who was engaged and he did the initial design, don't go discrediting that engineer to an extent that even when you are given the work, you don't consult him to know what elements he used, but you just go and speak of him because you want to take the work. That is unethical. So in engineering ethics, it's good for us to consult the person who designed first before you take over. Those are things I've found in over almost 100 buildings I've got to check in my inspection and audit, and you find somebody has taken over the works. There was an initial engineer, and this initial engineer was not very consultant on by this other one who has come in. To me, that is unethical. You need to consult your colleague, talk together, get the investigation, know why was he removed from the project, and then you take over responsibility as an engineer. That way, you will be able to stop what we are having, the issue of the collapse and the issue of you take over for another person. It's not ethical, and that's something you need to really check as engineers.
This is a very important role. Look, I tend to summarize our universal ethical conduct to be guided by just 4 words: responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. And this is because I'm not just a professional engineer, I'm also a certified professional project manager. And issues of ethics always come up. The engineer must actually act in a way that is really reliable and trustworthy. And if then we act in that manner, we will basically do only that which we can take professional responsibility. And we should also be really very key on anything that touches on the health and safety of others. And if then we have a responsibility in that manner, we make sure that cannot be compromised, because health and safety of everyone else is very important. Now, this then comes into mind that we also need to consider hazards that come up. And in the building industry, what will be the hazards? People are collapsing. Do we provide guidelines for example, how high you can work? And you must have a platform that is protected so that you don't fall. Because like a building code, the guideline is that beyond 2 meters high, you must provide a railing. If you are building, you are standing above 2 meters high, for example. And so we take a responsibility to make sure everyone is safe, for example. Besides making sure that everything that we do is actually lawful and justified. Because really, why should we collude with whoever, contractors or developers, to do what is not lawful or justified? When we understand the law, we understand the building code, we understand the building regulations, we understand the Water Act, we understand NEMA regulations. Why then would we probably do a construction so close to the river when there are regulations? There are regulations even on how we can build near airports and stuff like that. And I know a building like one which collapsed in Uruma was so close to the river, embankment, so that the water in the river can compromise the foundations. And so then besides us, in our design, do we act with accuracy? And do we make sure that we test and retest our designs? I'm one person who don't like it when I'm rushed by the architect, for example, to produce a design. And I think I can also go quiet if really you rush me too much, because really accuracy is like daily recipe for structural engineer. And knowing and understanding how to manage risks so that then we do not mislead others into a situation whereby I'm involved in a design, there are risks that are in there, and I am not disclosing, which is basically misleading or allowing others to be misled that my design can work when it cannot work. And so really, ethics or professional ethics become very important in guaranteeing structural integrity. Because really, when you are certified as a professional, it is assumed that what you produce is going to be safe for the public, and safety is not just to you, it should be verifiable. And that is why in our code of ethics, you also realize that it is emphasized that we must be objective and truthful in every statement we make, especially when you're in our professional capacity. And when you're not sure, the safest thing is to say you're not sure. Just like you shouldn't do a design and your soil bearing pressure is questionable. I recently audited a building somewhere, and it was on red soil. When I looked at designs done a couple of years ago, they were saying the design soil bearing pressure was 300 kilonewtons per square meters. And red soil, normally it will be a range of between 100, even 80 to 150 or somewhere there. So for you to be safe, you really need to be sure when you're recommending the soil bearing pressure. So my comment was, I hope this colleague did a structural geotechnical investigation, because there was no way I could approve soil bearing pressure over 300 on soil that I know ordinarily they will not reach there. So then we must be objective and truthful in our statement that we make in a professional capacity. And that's why the professional code of ethics for engineers becomes very important in our conduct as structural engineers. And that touches on even the areas that a senior colleague has mentioned, doing only what you're qualified to do. Thanks, engineer.
Code of ethics speaks for itself. Any structural engineer or any engineer for that matter, this is something you should be very familiar with. You should not be told to be a professional once you've been certified as a professional.
For that question, so straight answer for me is there is no code which is better. And I know there has been a debate in Telegram platform and all that BS is this is what Eurocode is better. What happens is that codes, they are just a simplification of a complex science and theories. you just simplify them into simple set of rules that can guide and standardize design for everyone. Now, what that means is the statics are basically the same. The science behind that is the same. But why would we have British standards, for example, and then move on to Eurocodes? Basically, as time goes by, we understand our environment more and in a better manner. And that informs science. New ideas come up. And so we update the known facts about science. And so we keep on improving codes. So codes are supposed to be updated after every 5 years. Because within that span, it is expected that, time, we understand our environment better and new ideas come up. So building code is basically a set of regulations to follow. Just like all other regulations, they may refer to a design standard. They may refer to a BS, they may refer to a European code, they may refer to American standard or something like that. But the entire thing and the entire idea is to simplify the codes and provide a guidance from A to Z of how you can go about in your building. Now, when we say we are withdrawing the British standards, we're not saying buildings designed to British standards will collapse. No. What we're saying is that that standard, having been replaced by Eurocodes, for instance, may not be subject to frequent reviews. And that means if you continue designing with that, you may miss out on most current research or a code that has been updated by most current research. And so buildings designed to British standards, for example, will not collapse because that code has been withdrawn or that standard has been withdrawn. But then the building regulations or the building codes not only just simplify the process or give us understand the process further and give us a reference guides for everything, like a reference guide when we need to design the structure, the reference guide on when we need to design the geotechnical design, the reference guide when we want to do dynamic loading, for the example, wind and earthquake. They just lead us to there so that we have authority in law of knowing this is the bare minimum I must achieve. But they also bring clarity in planning, clarity, of course, in design. I've mentioned design, construction, maintenance, and also demolition. They are actually standards for demolition. Now, the integrity of a structure, and I need to point this out, is, however, the responsibility of the designer or the responsible structural engineer. You cannot hide under a code and design a design that will fail. Because even codes, some are prescriptive, others are performance-based, but the structural engineer takes the final responsibility. So the integrity of the structure, the engineer must sign and say, yes, I carried out this design, I checked the loads, I did the dynamic loading, I checked the wind loading, I checked the earthquake, besides the static, you also check the not only static but also dynamic loadings, and you subjected your structure to different loading models, and it will pass. So the structural integrity still remains the responsibility of the designer and who is the engineer. So there's no way you can hide yourself under the code and say, I designed this code and then the building collapsed. No, it is expected that you make the right judgment. Yeah, and I hope that area can be clear, because sometimes it's a necessary debate when probably people start arguing it's a BS and all this and that. It's just a question of understanding that codes basically make our work easier so that we don't probably go to the basics of design. We have a load factor, for example, whether 1.6 or 1.5 live load, or 1.4 or 1.35 a dead load factor, or 1.2 for winds, or whatever. They provide a guideline to simplify a design. And I hope that helps us understand that clear, engineer. Thanks.
With Engineer Kiteme in terms of the building code, the responsibility is of engineer, because the things that change is only the fact depending on the materials we are manufacturing. Because like if you go to the reinforcement, we have already come out of the twist and the bars to leave the bars, which when you look at the yield strength for the design is about 500. And initially it was between 425 and 460 when we are using the designs. So when you look at the materials that are coming out in the market, that's why the costs are changing. And the only thing that changes are the factors. So it's the responsibility of the engineer, especially to look at what kind of material do I want to use. Because you can go to that level, then use that in your design and agree as I go to this code, even the Euro code that are coming up. Will I use the factors that are there? You make a ruling as an engineer so that you can be able to have a safe economical design that you are doing. The responsibility depends on the engineer. Because even those who are using the CP back in 1975, 72, those who use the BS 1985, the BS 811 1997, and all those, the buildings are still there. The factors are still there. So the only thing that changes are the factors that are being used in terms of the design. And the engineer need to make a decision. And even looking at what you are getting in terms of the spans you are using, it can inform you on where you want to go as you use those cones. But it depends with the materials that you're using in the country. I think for that one, Njagi Charagu has answered more, so I will not draw much on that. One of the scale of fees for engineers related to guarantee structural integrity, I would say no, because it's not about the fee, it's about the responsibility of the engineer. It's good to be paid well, and that will help the engineers that they take responsibility. The owners are able now to at least appreciate that the engineer to be paid. So the scale of fee is okay. But what I'm talking about in terms of integrity, it is you as an engineer. If you took responsibility and you agree to the fee which you have been given, it is your responsibility to make sure you give a safe, economical design to the owner. It's your responsibility to do that because you agreed to the fee that you are being given. Some of us, when you go to other institutions, schools, the churches, you give your CSR, and so you are not going to compromise your ethical designs because you are not getting anything there. You'll be able now to give out your own as an engineer and make sure whatever you are giving out is a safe and built is a safe design and economical design to the person. So the scale of this is good for us because at least it will allow the engineer to have their levels, to be at their level, but it will not, to me, it will not guarantee the structural integrity. What will guarantee is that, sorry, you have taken your responsibility, you are honest in what you are doing, and you are taking the engineering as your own, that you are giving to service. You use the science to help the country. And actually, when you do a structure, it comes out and you see it standing. It is a joy for the person. There is a satisfaction inside you when you see the project completed. You can even post about it that this is me who did that. This 100-story building, I'm the one who did that. The fee may have been low, but you feel a satisfaction, which is new. Although the scale of fee is important for the engineers, so that they are also remunerated well, and they are able now to also reach the level they are supposed to do. And that's how we answer that question on in terms of structural integrity in connection with the scale of fees.
We want to imagine the two as being separate, so that we look at the scale of fees and compensation on the side of welfare and all that. And you and I know that you really must provide the right services. And then if you are not being compensated to the extent that you can deliver services that are professional, you have a right not to take such a job. And personally, I have negotiated a job and money is not what I can take, and I let it go. So we probably now can separate them so that then that is clear. We need to earn our living, and so the scale of fees should also be able to protect us as we practice. And I hope it is gazetted soon. But yeah, we can look at both, one on the side of welfare, then on the other side of really the strict professionality. Because there's another engineer who is really, the question is not the scale of fees, he is actually paid by employer to do the work.
So they should really do the work correctly. But when it comes now for me, when I'm running my farm, yes, the scale of fees needs to make sure that I can pay my overheads even as I continue to do the services. So I would look at it that way. Thanks, engineer.
So we put it in our website, public works website. We are able to put that data on the website, and people are able to see it on our website in terms of National Building Inspectorate. So we will be able to update our website for public works, and people can be able to look at it and see. But quickly, as I said from the onset, we have been able to audit 17,120, and as I said, 876 are unsafe, which needs to be checked. We have almost 11,225 that the owners need to act on, so they can be able to attain the level we are talking about in terms of safety and all that. So that's the data which we can be able to give. We have about 5,000 which are safe, and which at least we can say people can be able to occupy very well. That data is available. We can be able to give it out, and if anybody write to us, even if any institution, we are able to give out the data. It's good for me to give the hotline for the people who are listening to us, because in the case you see a building which is suspect, and you'd like to inform us as a public work, and also National Building Inspectorate, we are able to send our staff or whoever is on the ground to counter check, and then we are able to save lives. You know that, so that we can stop these collapse of structures. 0726 123 123, or you can use 0719 123 123. Those numbers are hotlines for the Public Works, National Building Inspectorate, and people call from all over the country, and we're able to use our members on the ground, our Public Works staff who are on the ground, or ourselves, we go there to check what is happening. And that will be able to at least advise the owners on what is going on and save the life of our Kenyans.
Comes down to ethics, pay or no pay. If you can't accept the pay, then you have to let the job go instead of taking it up and doing a shoddy job. Us to conclude the session at that, and thank you very much those who tuned in, and may you all have a fruitful and wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.
And I feel well, I wish I had more time to continue with this discussion. It's a good discussion, and I'm actually happy with what is happening with all that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.